मगर ये देश रहना चाहिए, इस देश का लोकतंत्र में रहना चाहिए.
You can do one Mumbai, you may lose Balochistan.
2-1-0. S139 mortar.
This man is a horrible man. He must be shunned.
For this to count. Our job is to hit the target, not to count the body bags.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome back to the show once again. Always my pleasure.
Yeah, good afternoon, Parth, and back again. It feels always good to talk on relevant topics. So, what is the topic today?
So, sir, we are going to discuss the current economic situation which is happening in India. Our Prime Minister has given us an appeal, and this is our short presentation about it. So, let's begin, right? So, India is under pressure right now. Of course, there is a lot of things coming out from the West Asia war, which is happening, and a lot of the call from Modi ji has come from the appeal to the nation where every citizen has to step up in certain way, and this presentation will explain you why and how, what are the impacts. So let's begin.
Yeah.
So okay, so this is the quote unquote battlefield assessment, if you will, if we are talking about this as a idea, right? So India's war chest is of roughly 701 billion and rising. The latest numbers are at some 696 billion, if I am not
Yes,
wrong.
less than 700.
Yes, so it's roughly stable. It is not gone either way. It is stable, but it is also on the rising based on when our economy will grow. We will do better. Our forex reserve will also do
But
better.
for the
Right?
time being, it is lowered because of this fuel crisis.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yes.
right. So we are saying that okay, roughly this amount will cover 11 months of imports, assuming that if nothing else changed and if for some reason that we did not have any more forex reserves coming in, this would be only worth 11 months of imports. But we are in a stable situation. We are not to worry about this. But this is the idea of how much this money represents or how much time of economic output that we can expect for imports if we want to get it without any new additions. Okay, so the next one, yeah, next one. So what is this composition from? Like, is it from what kind of assets this is from? This is from
85% is foreign currency,
yes.
12% gold reserves, and 3% is your SDRs and IMF reserve positions.
Yes, yes, yes. So this makes it clear that for the liquid trade purpose, we have dollars, euros, and pounds, which is required for RBI and others to intervene in the market whenever there is an unnecessary volatility, which is going to cause turmoil. So to keep things stable. Then we have also gotten gold back from abroad, from Bank of England and other places from the US, back to India, and it shows that okay, it's part of reserve, and now more than 60% is stored domestically, right? So we are getting
Okay.
more and more of that back to India.
Okay, let's just for our viewers, let me tell you what is happening in the world is that now the pegging of your currency is shifting from US dollars and euro, this basket, to gold reserves. That's why most central banks are buying gold. India has also got this 80 metric tons in the recent years, and it was going to increase. Slowly, your currency will be pegged, or in comparison with how much gold reserves you have. So this is an important factor.
That's right, that's right. So if we go to the next one, right? So what is the major cause of any drain? So what are we spending our foreign exchange primarily on, right? So primarily we are spending foreign exchange on crude oil imports, which is the arguably one of the highest items in our budget, or the line items in our budget. Then perhaps it's gold, and it is outbound tourism, and these numbers are very very big and drastic, which is why also we have this combined outflow to be very very high all in all together, and maybe they are exceeding totally 240 billion overall, right?
Yes. So actually, if you see, this is the main slide of our presentation today, that you find our imports, which is costing us this forex drain, is primarily 137 billion on crude oil, which is we can't. It is an inescapable requirement, and we can only lower it. but we need to import it. The gold and outbound tourism is something which is again very substantial. 137 is to 102. If you can reduce the outbound tourism, it is around 15% or say 12% of what the forex drain is, and gold reserves is around 30 or 40%. So if you see, what I'm trying to say is, if gold imports for a year and outbound tourism should be totally banned. $30 billion we are spending on outbound tourism in this year of wars, where multiple wars are going on. If the gold imports and outbound tourism can be substantially reduced, the burden on our forex reserve will be less, and our rupee value will be higher, and we'll be more comfortable with our government spending, when the revenue from the government and what you're spending for these three critical items.
That's right. So then afterwards, what is the big trap here, right? So oil. Oil is a very important geopolitical commodity.
Out of that,
Uh,
why? Because only 80, 90%, 89% is imported. That's why we are spending 137 billion on the import
yes,
bill.
yes, yes. And if you look at it, there is a huge geopolitical risk associated with oil, right? Hormuz is a problem. It carries roughly 20% of global oil. It does not help that it is also causing disruption to India. Uh, every rupee depreciation which happens as per the years pass, it hits our oil import bill. Like, it will keep on increasing. We have to pay more
Every kid
rupees
in
for
the
this
world,
amount of dollars.
every kid in the world knows this word Hormuz now. It is creating chaos in the world. Only one state has, spoiled entire global, fuel business.
Yes. And then all of the top suppliers which are for India, like Iraq, Russia, Saudi Arabia, all of them are in the area of geopolitical risk. Either way, it is a vulnerability that we are trying to focus or
See, we
fix.
were around $60 to $70 per barrel, the crude Brent which we buy. Today we are at 107, 108. So literally 40, 50% of the, maybe more, the value has increased. That is affecting your inflation, the food items, the you know grocery bills, everything is improved, has increased. So this is a very important factor in everybody's life. Your transportation, your air travel, your rail travel, your food, your groceries, everything is changing because of this 40 to 50% increase in the price of crude oil.
So also we had kind of a oil spike, almost
Hmm.
a $10 per
Per barrel
barrel oil
spike.
spike.
Yeah.
This is happened, and it is
Because of the
costing
foreign
us.
exchange. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's costing us a lot of more foreign exchange, right?
Yes.
So if we go on to the next one, right, so we can see that what is the safety
Reserves.
in net.
Yeah.
Yes. So we can say consumption coverage is perhaps 9.5 days, but the total reserve is actually on very high. Like, we are maybe
It is
60.
what I think the petroleum minister said is we got 45 days of reserve
Yes, and
yesterday.
there are varying statements on that, but roughly 45 to more than that.
Yeah,
So
60 days
uh,
was earlier. Now it is 45 days. That is what he's trying to say.
yes, 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 yes. And then as per that, we are getting the reserves. Like, it's being kept in different places throughout the country, so that we are never in a position that one sabotage or one kind of incident in one
Yeah,
place can disrupt it.
geographically separated. Yeah.
It is separated
So
that way.
east coast, west coast, and somewhere down south,
Yes, that's right. And then if you look at it, like the next part, the gold. So it's a silent problem. Yeah, Indians,
it
we
is a
love
big
gold.
problem. Yeah.
I
If you
like.
see the graph, Parth, 2022 we had 35 billion import of gold, and in 3 years' time we are more than double, 72 billion of imports in gold. So if you see, since we've got money, our economy is doing well, and as per long-term savings, because stock markets are not doing well, so everybody is investing in gold coins, gold, and other things. Even those who have marriages and other ceremonies, they are buying because of their requirement. But otherwise, people are investing too much on ETF, on physical gold coins, physical. That is what it is. They're putting all this savings, life savings into gold, and gold is not manufactured in India, produced in India. Gold is largely produced in Africa and other places, and the reserves of gold are limited and they're depleting. Hence, the cost of gold is, gold is bought in India through paying foreign forex, US dollars. So effectively, you're buying more gold, so you're importing more gold, paying more forex, and your forex reserves are decreasing. So it is better to not buy gold, because $70 billion is a huge chunk in your forex reserve.
Yeah, and it's a big line item in our
So it is
budget.
very
So
logically for the prime minister to say stop buying gold because it is affecting our economy. It is not
yes,
your personal choice, but now it is affecting our economy because gold, we don't produce gold. We buy it
yes,
from outside.
yes. And then so what is the reason for this entire crisis? Like, why is a prime minister talking about this? Because this is due to the crisis which is happening. The entire West Asia, directly or indirectly, is on fire, right? So
Yes.
from Feb 2026 to today, May, we are in a situation where a lot of the things are changing, and a lot of the pressures on Indian economy is kind of happening, right? Uh,
Okay.
but there are some good points. You can say because maybe supply is tightened, the crude import volumes are falling. Indirectly, maybe we are consuming less in terms of gold, but in terms of crude. But the point is that it's not that we are at equilibrium with the market, but the imports are falling due to supply crunch. But it is causing the price to rise, so it is not good either, right?
Yes.
It's getting balanced out in one way or another. So on the next one, right? So Modi ji made a specific 7-point appeal to the nation in Hyderabad.
So it is an
All of these,
appeal. It is not an order. It is appeal
yes,
that we should understand why this appeal is there. Yeah.
yes, yes. So all of these different things might help us in trying to reduce our import bill. Like, okay, so one personal side note is, like, for example, we are very good at agriculture in our country. Agriculture is part of our backbone in India, but for some reason, still we are not producing enough amount of edible oils, right? Maybe that is a segment in
See,
which
for agriculture, why it has said to go for natural farming because urea is again imported. So
yes.
if you go for organic farming, you don't have to import. You have to import less of urea, which will again cause a less drain in your forex reserve.
Yes, and I had heard about special programs, so that there's a different technique in agriculture where if you plant trees along with the organic farm that you have, not only your
Hmm.
soil quality will improve, but when the trees will mature, you get much more money from the trees or the fruits which are coming from the trees which are in your farms, so that it
Yes.
makes it possible to bridge the gap between the low production which happens when you use organic farming, and then you are able to make up that gap, so effectively that organic farming becomes sustainable. But it is something which there is a lot of training required, so that everybody understands how to implement this. It's not in one and done. It's not a simple task, but it is a matter of education with the farmers. So this is an
Yes.
ongoing effort. So then next, so what is the national security angle on this, right? uh, in my opinion, forex is a economic ammunition, right? It gives us the for withdrawal and the strength to kind of uh, on a large level uh, survive, or you can say be very strong in times of crisis. It makes it possible for us to weather all kinds of storms and crises that may happen. Like, let's say, if future obstacles happens once again, if there is economic sanctions on us, so then we are able to use our economic forex reserves to weather through that tough period, and
Yes.
it will enable us to do the better amount of defense, or you can say that buy a better amount of equipment when we need to, if it's not available locally.
Actually,
And
your term of ammunition is right because in
yes,
any warfare, if your ammunition is, you can last as long as your ammunition is there. So economically, this is ammunition. If you don't have forex reserve, you cannot run your country. You cannot import oil. You cannot get your defense products. Okay, you cannot get currency, other issues bought for the country. So this is an important factor.
yep. And then in terms of the oil shock, so that is kind of a economic warfare which is happening indirectly on India's economy due to the crisis which is happening elsewhere, right? So it is that kind of shock which is causing us a challenge or a pressure. Okay. And then the next part is, so like Modi ji said, there is some part of economic patriotism that can, one can make a choice to do it. It's not an order. Nobody's forcing anybody. But if one wants to say, okay, maybe this year I will save my money into maybe doing something else. Maybe I will invest in some kind of equities or some other whatever asset that they are interested in, except gold or some specific amount of things which are causing us more amount of pain in our forex reserves. So maybe that can help. As
Okay, you'll be surprised to know if you want to invest in metals, gold is where we get maximum 90% or more is imported, right? If you invest in silver, silver is still produced in India. Weaver silver mines, copper. So which ETFs are also doing well. So instead of investing in gold, one can invest in copper and silver. The metals are fairly less, harmful for our forex reserves. And rather, if you go to the same slide, I feel you have only suggested 20% reduction in outbound tourism. I feel we should have 50% reduction in outbound tourism. Tourism is something luxury which you can also you can save around $12 billion, right? So gold 50% reduction, and again, and rather reduction in terms of instead of spending on gold, spend on copper, silver, and other items which are not imported so much. The crunch on import is not so much, and tourism, though, you can 50-60% you can reduce for a year or so in the year of wars, as it is all the flights go through Dubai and Middle East, so it is better to avoid them and go for domestic tourism. And by going for EVs and carpooling and using public transport, 10% reduction in fuel consumption can be there. And in your arithmetic, you can add on around 50-60 billion dollars of forex outgo you can reduce.
Yep, and every bit helps, right? So if we consider this on a national scale,
Yes.
certainly maybe few months from now we will see when the new data is published. Modi ji's appeal, we can see how much it has worked out, or people have adopted or not adopted. We hope it's always better, because it means that we are voting for the strength of our economy, and not necessarily for our convenience, right?
Yes.
Because
And that
as
is why this 6% to 15% in 2022, this import duty was reduced from 15 to 6. Again, it has been 15 to 9, then 6. Now, again, it has been increased to 15. So, there's a deterrent of not buying gold.
Yep.
Your taxes are high.
Yes. So we make a choice, and I think that is pretty
And
much it.
it is for the country and for yourself also. Why you want to invest when
Yeah,
things gold prices are going high, tourism cost is going high. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So from that perspective, I think this is the presentation. India's forex reserves are very much an economic shield. So every citizen has some role in defending them. We can consider that if we have the possibility of contributing somehow, we should do it. We should try to defer unnecessary purchases if it's possible, and make it. As much as is necessary, like whatever efforts are there, we can put it.
Yeah,
And
I feel if I have got limit amount of money in my kitty, I will prefer to get oil which is critical imports, reduce the consumption, and spend less on gold and tourism, so that I'm comfortable. I spend more on gold and tourism, but I'm not able to get good amount of oil, which is increasing my home budget and grocery and other bills. So we have to be logical and understand the situation of the world. It is not created by this government or the country's domestic situations. This is created internationally. Everywhere this is happening, we should appreciate and understand that.
exactly. So, sir, I think this concludes our presentation.
Yes, it was very
And
informative and I think short and sweet for people to understand.
yes, sir. So we will do this again. Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Okay, happy viewing. Bye.